We all know about that.
Yeah. We have all the portraits of some of our muses here, from J.K. Rowling to, Steve Jobs and so forth and so on. And I think it's important to research them. And it's like putting, fuel in the fire every day. There's constant inspiration when you read about them, what they were able to accomplish, how they went about accomplishing it. It's just constantly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a gallery wall in my home. If we were recording this at my place in Hollywood,
awesome.
Like I have a gallery wall, Steve Jobs is right there.
Yeah.
Right. And Einstein's there.
Because their stories still live, which brings us to the importance of storytelling.
Yeah.
Their stories still live. It's important to learn from them. And if anything, it helps you remember that they are human, just like us.
Yeah.
Oh, why not?
And the more action you take, the more you think is possible.
Yeah, because you realize they're people just like us. Don't like me. It's terrible.
And as a father of 4 girls, I wanted to ask you, what's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself by being a father?
When you become a parent, things become much more, life becomes, it lines things up for you a little differently. Like before you have kids, me and my wife, we can travel anytime. There's work and, you become you have a very clear focus. When you have children, it becomes about them. It's not about you guys anymore. So that shift, it's a big one.
You don't feel that everyone gets into that.
Sure.
When you're going through these visualizations of what could this look like, it goes on the content.
Well, like creativity isn't everything, like even in consistent, like what I found is creativity a lot of time comes from structure.
I agree. I'm so glad you said that.
Like if you don't have the structure, you're just aimlessly doing stuff.
Yes. You study life a lot.
So like having a clear structure of understanding, okay, this morning I'm going to, like when I was writing a Wizard Art series and outlining Legacy, I come in the morning, 7 a.m. and I'm there. I'm writing backstory from 7 to 12. Then I go pick up my kids and then I come right back and I'm writing again. So it becomes harder for kids to try to weave through a lot of the crap that's out there to find stuff that's actually beneficial to them.
Yeah, I think you reminded me, I think E.O. Wilson said, we're drowning in information, starving for wisdom.
Yes,
right?
Sure.
Especially, and that's why I think your work is cutting through, because I think what you've managed to do with your new work is that you're finding ways to connect with what people care about, but you're taking it a step deeper.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're not just settling for let's talk about sports. It's not just about sports.
Right.
It's about life, right?
No, man. It's just something I enjoyed, and I enjoyed writing ads. It was something funny about trying to distill a message down into 30 seconds or a minute, depending on the budget. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
trying to say something important, trying to speak to the, brand attributes, but also speak to something that's greater and that has a stronger message, stronger philosophical message. And how do you connect those dots? So putting that puzzle together was something that was really intriguing.
Yeah.
But I never thought I'd be writing novels or movies and that sort of stuff. Never, man.
I love.
Okay. Have you let them down before? Oh, I'm sure. In practice and things of that nature, right? They're still there.
Yeah.
And so when you're able to unpack it, you kind of look at it for what it is, which is really nothing.
Yeah, I love that. Breaking it down. I think that's so important. I think everyone who's listening or watching right now, next time you're facing a fear, next time you're going against something, do that. Like literally unpack it. Don't just settle for your first answer, because the first answer is rarely the right one.
You got to be able to look at it and, and deal with it head on.
Yeah. I love that, man. What can I do right now? Like, how can I make it happen? But like with you, I think people always ask you also like, how do you deal with losing or failure? What I'm intrigued by is how someone like you deals with winning, because you've won again and again. And like I was saying earlier, you won, obviously we know you won in basketball big as an athlete, but you're winning now, even in the work you're doing here as a storyteller, as a producer, right?
Yeah.
It's a great point.
So they're going to look like my kids and we're going to go from there. Yeah. It's huge, man.
Huge.
So books is just the first thing. Publishing is the first thing. Now, if we look at animation is even worse. Well, will it be successful? Even beyond that, the animators themselves, there's no diversity in that industry.
Right. Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. Yeah, and everything's spreading so fast now, and everything's global now.
Yeah.
Right? Nearly all content is global now, and most global markets are growing everywhere. So the need for people, especially young people, being able to see themselves in characters. And it's not, and I think it's a deeper point that you're making, is you want to be able to see your story in someone.
Right.
Right? Even just beyond like color and background. It's like your story, your experience of life.
When we made Dear Basketball, we got a lot of pushback from people. Like, I took it to some very prominent studios at first, and they all said, yeah, no. Because you said basketball is too sports specific. Nobody's going to connect with this sort of thing. Because, there's a lot of people out there who don't watch basketball. And I'm like, well, that's not the point. It's not the point. And so it was really a case study. Even with our novels, everybody was like, sports novels, nobody's going to read that. It's too.
Where did you develop that from? That ability to see beyond, to think deeper, to reflect deeper. Where did that come from?
Well, I had to do that because, I growing up in Italy. When I first moved over there, it was, I didn't speak Italian. I didn't have any friends. I had the game of basketball, and through sport and playing soccer, I was able to make friends and build connections. But it was a lot of time spent alone. And when I came back to the States, I wasn't the most athletic kid. It's fashionable now. They're doing windmills and dunking backwards. Share this, and then so forth and so on. And then so you have to live it. And when you practice those things, you become better at it. But I just feel like in this day and age, our children have become less imaginative about how to problem solve, and parents and coaches have become more directive in trying to mandate or give orders or teach kids how to think and teach kids how to behave and tell them how to behave versus teaching them how to behave. And so that's why I'm creating these stories and creating this content.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so true. When you treat people as kids, then they always be kids.
Right.
What was something in your life that you were shy about originally, or that took you a while to go head on with?
Practicing every day. A lot of things that I wrote were ads. And so when you write an ad, nobody looks up at who wrote the ad, right? You can there's a certain anonymity that comes along with that, right? But writing Dear Basketball was different. It's putting it out there for the world to see. It's trying to create a short film. And they want to learn about soccer balls and basketballs and volleyballs and, magic that comes from that.
And I love that you're encouraging young people to think more imaginatively about sports.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you go a step deeper. For me, observing you and learning about you and hearing you speak in other interviews and everything, what I'm fascinated by is that you've dealt with things in life pretty head on, right? And I was like, how do I take these teachings that are like so sacred, they're hidden away in these books, and how do I make them really relevant and accessible and practical to the whole world? Because I know that anyone can access them. They're universal, right? These teachings can apply to anyone, but sometimes they're just hidden away.
Sure. A lot of times I've seen players, even myself, when I was younger, being consumed by a particular fear. And to the point where you're saying, okay, it's not good to feel fear. I shouldn't be nervous in a situation like that. And it does nothing but grow. Versus stepping back and saying, yeah, I am nervous about the situation. Yeah, I am fearful about the situation. Well, sports is the greatest metaphor we have in terms of dealing with life. Because, even if you listen to music will give you guidance, right? That you can then meditate on and think about how you would apply it. In sports, you have to apply it in the here and now. Well, that's the thing too, is like, people think like you're just kind of mulling along, and all of a sudden, aha, like the show that we have on ESPN now called Detail, basketball, sports breakdown show. That came to me when I was walking around with my wife shopping. Yeah. And I look at a piece of fabric and I'm like, wow, this is really the detail. And this thing is, oh my, Detail. That's the name of the show. And then everything came from there. But I had been thinking about a show like that for like a year.
Yeah.
And I couldn't shake it loose. I'm like,
thank you.
Yeah.
Like, thank you so much for saying no, and you didn't think it was going to work, because now I figured it out myself.
Yes.
And what you said, it actually builds confidence and validation. And
Oprah told me this when I first decided to build the studio, and I was asking how Harpo came to be. And she said, well, when she was doing her deal for the Oprah Winfrey show, she was re-upping her deal.